There are four things that almost guarantee a happy life: good friends, self-confidence, cash in the bank, and owning your own home. Oh, there's a couple of dozen more, and I wrote them all down. Sometimes I've found that the smallest, most insignificant decisions that I made had a profound impact on my life. Now, if you make the smallest decision to subscribe, it might change your life. I mean, it's the smallest decision. It costs you nothing, and it can't hurt. Have you ever had to make a speech or been called upon to make a speech? At least the first time that ever happened to you, do you remember how you felt or how you might feel if it happens again? Terror is perhaps too strong a word, but certainly a lot of trepidation. And that's perfectly understandable. I mean, that's a natural reaction. You are exposing yourself to being judged by a very large number of people. So that's perfectly understandable. The only time that you might not be concerned about such a thing is if you're used to it, if you're doing it all the time. Sure, that's a different thing. But for most of us, that one particular act is a bit scary. And so we could consider that to be a pretty normal sort of thing. If you feel similar, but not quite to that extent, trepidation when you enter a room full of strangers, or you're going to a meeting where there's a lot of people, or any one of those sort of situations where there's a crowd, and if your fear level is up there, maybe not to terror, but it's up there just the same, well, then that's what I think of as being social anxiety. Now, that can be addressed. There are ways to deal with social anxiety, practical ways. Well, certainly one or two practical ways that I know and I have used, and I discuss this in my book in some detail. But social anxiety, well, it's a bitch, and no one wants to live with it if you can avoid it. One of the ways to deal with this, with things that are uncomfortable, is to at least learn a little bit about how it is formed, where it comes from, what you have to try to do, why it's there, and how it operates. Gives you some chance of being able to influence it, if not to control it. Our ancestors lived in small groups, and in small groups there was always a dominance of some description, dominant individual or a dominant group, and because of that, you were always, or as an individual in that group, you would have always been, you were continually assessed, regularly assessed, mainly, well, for sometimes for other reasons, but mainly you were being assessed as a potential threat. And that's the concerning one, because if you were considered by the dominance group or person or the individual to be a threat to them, that could end very badly. So it was very natural that when judgment was being passed upon you, that you would feel that concern. Not so bad when you're in the crowd, because as you'd be assessed less frequently, for a starter, and also because you wouldn't look like being much of a threat, so it was fine. That would be fine. You'd live a more comfortable life, and a happy life is just as important today as it was then. Being in that group is one of the drivers for our need to conform. And peer pressure come from it being important to be part of that group, to be low profile and not be a threat to the dominant power at the time. We had to do that, or we just lived our life in fear, and you don't have a very happy life doing that. If you failed that test in some way, that could have a very bad outcome. And even though today that doesn't occur, well, very infrequently, although there is an example given by Jared Diamond in his book Guns, Germs and Steel, which is a really great book, award-winning book, by the way. He gives an example in New Guinea where he spent a lot of his time doing research, and according to him or his book, there are times when two people from the highlands, two different tribes, might meet up in a small town or community, and would then set about spending time trying to find a mutual acquaintance or some commonality so they could avoid the unpleasant necessity to zero each other out. Obviously, most times they found a way to do that. But yeah, it was a strange ritual they had to go to. Otherwise, they felt compelled to do the business. But that's an aside. That doesn't happen. It's not going to happen to you. Just the thing. The point, though, is that when you're being assessed, your subconscious doesn't want to take any chances. I mean, it's been around a long time, and it's trying to keep you alive. So that's the fear that you feel. That's the response that you get. Now, the thing is that when you come to a group of people, this group of people are not concerned about assessing you in any great detail. Yes, they'll have a quick look to make sure that you're not too much of a threat, but mainly they're concerned about what you think of them. Strangely enough, because after all, we're all human. We're all concerned about what others think of us. Not just because it's instinctive to be that way. So the people in the group that you just walked into, they're more concerned about themselves, about what you think of them, which is handy because you're less concerned about what they think of you when that's the case. Every one of these people in this group, they have an instinct to be careful about the stranger. It's just instinctive. You want to be careful about the stranger walking into your midst because until they find out that they're equal to you or perhaps more powerful than you, they need to be a little circumspect just in case. And that's a handy thing for you to know that that's what's going on. They don't know if you've spotted their weakness. They don't know that for sure. You might be a very smart person and very insightful and seen something. So to just be on the safe side, they need to hold back a little bit before they get too close to you. And that's fine. But if you think, well, if you're thinking, are they looking at you to see if you are weaker than them, then you're right, they are. That's what they're looking at. They want to know if they are safer because they are more powerful or you are less confident than they are. Now, that's your instinct kicking in if you feel you're being assessed for that. People are looking at your manner, your confident bearing or lack of confidence in bearing, your dress sense. Everything about you is being assessed in that very quick assessment. Now, it's a very fast assessment, very fast. I'm not talking as something as long as 2 seconds or anything, much, much shorter than that. And there's a couple of reasons why that was important. The first reason, the obvious one, is that quite often you need to assess more than one person, so you can't spend too much time on each individual. So that's one reason why it's fairly short. But probably from a biological viewpoint, the reason that it's so short is because that when someone is assessing someone else, the person being assessed this is obviously going back a long way, but they might have felt that if that person was taking too long to do the assessment, perhaps they were considering getting rid of a threat. And the other person might be thinking, maybe I better strike first in case I get the chop. So this potential for conflict goes away when the assessment is done relatively quickly. And so in social circles nowadays, it's very fast. We're just talking a microsecond, a few parts of 1 or 2 seconds, and they do the quick assessment. Even though that sounds like bad news, your instincts are saying that if you don't pass scrutiny, that could have fatal consequences. And that's why your instincts are telling you to be careful. And you think, well, I don't want to feel that way. Obviously, how do I deal with that? How do I get rid of it? Well, you can't. You can't get rid of it because that's your instincts are going to always kick in first. However, here's some good news. Your computer, the one between your ears, it's a fact that it can't process two things at the same time. We can do them alternatively very fast, but we can't do two things at the same time. It's just not possible to think two things. You can only have one thought at a time. Now, you can be in the I am being assessed mode, I am being judged, I am being valued, I am being evaluated. You can be in that mode, or your brain can be in the I am evaluating mode. But you can't do them at the same time. It's got to be one or the other. So what happens if you're in this group, you just walk into this group and everyone or a large number of people look at you straight away, bang, you can't see them all. However, if you look at one person and instead of just doing a very fast scan and then moving on to the next one and the next one and the next one, instead of doing that, if you look at the first person and you hold that scan, maybe up to a second or second and a half, 2 seconds, I don't know, it could be a long, it sounds like a long time, but it really is. You hold that gaze, you look at that person, you've got them. You got them by the eyeballs. And you slowly scan down, they can see that you're looking at their neck and their shoulders and then back up to their face again, a full scan like that. You've just done this full scan. Now, that sets off alarm bells big time. Instinctively, they are now concerned about your assessment of them. Now, you can go along and do this to a number. You can't go to the ridiculous extreme to do 100 in a row, but you can do quite a number of them. So this is the second thing that's really important. Not only now have you established that you are, in their eyes, you've scrubbed up pretty well, pretty confident, dominant. You're not dominant, but you're able to hold your own. You're not some scaredy cat. You looked at them in the eye and you've evaluated them. And they're going, oh, I hope he or she doesn't think bad of me. That's what they're thinking. But here's the second important part. Because you can't process two thoughts at the same time, your brain is in busy scanning mode. It cannot spend any time in the terrifying I am being assessed mode. So you have denied your brain the opportunity to scare you shitless. It can't do that because it's busy. It's got work to do. You're scanning these people, evaluating them one at a time, one after the other, one after the other. This could go on for 5 or 10 seconds or more. And by that stage, things are settling down quite a bit. Your entry has already been and gone and someone else is coming in now. So you have found a way now to be able to deal with that uncomfortable situation of actually confronting a crowd for the first time. Now, in a way, you are well equipped to deal with social anxiety, because if you understand that it's being pushed by your instincts, that you can't control the reactions, you can change the attention span of your brain. And so when you go into these sort of social situations, you do not have to feel intimidated by being assessed, simply because, one, those people are not interested in what they are assessing you for. They have mild interest in you, but that's all. What they are mainly concerned about is what you think of them. That's what they're concerned about. Will you think of them well? Will you give them good marks? That's what concerns them. So okay, if I'm the one giving out the good marks, that's not so bad. And also don't forget that when this is happening, you cannot think of two things at the same time. So whatever you're doing that assessment, whatever you're thinking about, what marks, what grade, what evaluation you're giving to these strangers that you've never seen before, whatever you know that they're concerned about that, your brain is too busy doing that to be worried about being assessed by them. Yeah, so, okay, well, that's all well and good, but I still hate going, okay, here's some practice. Obviously, you go into supermarkets, you go into shops, you go into businesses, you go places where there are people. Practice it every time you walk when you walk into a shop, stop, survey, consider, make an evaluation of the people. Which ones, who's doing what? It doesn't have to stand there for 5 minutes doing this. You can do it in a very short period of time. But if you practice doing that, after a little while, it becomes almost instinctive. You just stroll in, survey the scene, and you decide how these people present to you. Do they present as friendly? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they well dressed? You make that assessment. And while you're doing that, you're not thinking about how they're assessing you. That doesn't even cross your mind because it can't. Your mind is busy doing something else. That's a really important thing. It's a great way to be able to deal with this uncomfortable situation of being socially anxious. It's one of quite a few subjects, well, a lot of subjects covered in the book. And not that I'm suggesting you have to race out to Amazon and get a copy of the book unless you want to know in advance. But all of these subjects I'm going to be covering in some detail. It might take a few months or 6 months or 12 months or something to get through them all. But there's a lot of subjects to cover because having a happy life, after all, getting rid of social anxiety is one really good step along the road to having a much happier life if you feel more confident. So anyway, that's the main thing for now. If you subscribe, well and good. You'll hear about them when they come up. If you just like the video and tick the like box, YouTube will probably show it to other people, and perhaps some of those people really feel a lot of social anxiety. So you might be helping out another good soul. Well, that's the thought anyway. All right, so that's it for now. Hopefully I'll see you again soon, and don't forget, have a good happy life, eh?